When we watch movies, we only see the finished product that's presented to us with a neatly tied bow. But what some of us don't think about are the accidents that come with filming some tough scenes. Anywhere from losing limbs, to fatalities, to even a supposed cursed set. Join me today as we take a look at horrible accidents that happened on movie sets. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. By the time this video drops, March 19th would have already passed, and that was my birthday. So as I'm filming this, I'm still 22. But when this video comes out, I am now 23. Yes, get the unk comments out of the way already. And yes, I literally am an uncle. I have a nephew. It's crazy. This is my 4th year being a successful YouTuber. Some of you have been watching me since I was 19. Wow. And if you got a nice meal ready to watch this video, I appreciate that. You know, it's the biggest compliment as a YouTuber if you guys get your meals ready for my videos. But yeah, with that being said, in case you didn't see last week's video, that makes complete sense. It got age restricted 8 hours into being uploaded, and it was doing pretty good. And then it just, obviously with age restrictions, it doesn't go out to recommended. So had to deal with re-uploading it. And then the views were distributed within 2 videos, whatever. The point is, YouTube is annoying. I'm used to it. They actually removed the age restriction 2 days later. Like, if I'm gonna... Anyway, so if you have even more food, save that for watching that video after this one. It's Songs with Disturbing Backstories Part 3. I know it's not my fault when it comes to my videos getting age restricted, but I can't help but apologize for the mess. And the videos getting age restricted isn't anything new on this channel, so I really am thankful for the sponsors that we get. And speaking of, today's video is sponsored by Flexispot. Let me introduce you guys to Flexispot's E7 Plus standing desk. Look at this beautiful, simple design that packs more than you'd expect. For starters, the setup said it required at least 2 people, but your boy set it up on his own. Yeah, bet you didn't know I was a part-time handyman. It can hold up to 540 pounds static and 440 pounds lifting. So yes, your mom can actually sit on And like the name says, you can stand while doing your work or simply sit down. It also gives you the option to set presets for your preferred heights. This desk is incredibly stable. I mean, it doesn't matter what you have on it. The objects are pretty safe. This stability is part of the reason I got a 4-leg standing desk rather than the common 2-leg one. I also got these cool cabinets, and even these are extremely sturdy, and they're not even glued on. Yeah, I was questioning their strength, but that adhesive seems to be stickier than even me. And on top of all that, the E7 Plus is very budget friendly compared to alternatives like the Uplift V2 or Desk House, which can cost thousands. And I can't end this segment without mentioning the C7 Max chair, which they also sent me. And that setup was extremely easy, by the way. No more back pain, as it has adaptive lumbar support, a 0.2-inch thick latex layer so your booty is comfortable during long gaming sessions, or whatever you're sitting down for, adjustable armrest height and headrest height, oh, and not to mention a footrest. Don't miss out on the chance to upgrade to the Flexispot E7 Plus 4-leg standing desk. Use my code TUV50 at checkout for $50 off. Click the link below to get yours now and experience the ultimate in stability and performance. With that being said, thank you Flexispot, and let's get back to the video. The Crow, 1994, dummy bullet gone wrong. The Crow was released in 1994 and was an absolute hit, grossing over $11 million in its opening weekend and becoming Miramax's biggest ever opening at the time. People loved it, at least going by the 87% Rotten Tomatoes rating, although an attempted remake from last year, The Crow 2024, was one of the biggest flops the film industry has seen in a while. Anyway, despite that original film being a hit and breaking records, it also unfortunately became associated with a rather tragic incident involving Brandon Lee, son of the legendary Bruce Lee. The incident happened on March 31st, 1993, when, while filming a scene, Lee, who played the lead character Eric Draven, was fatally shot by accident. The specific scene being worked on involved Lee's character walking into his apartment to find his fiancée being attacked, and a thug, played by actor Michael Massey, firing a Smith & Wesson Model 629 44 Magnum revolver at him. Now you can probably see where this is going. The gun being used was supposed to be loaded with blanks, but then unfortunately, a previous scene had left a dummy bullet lodged in the barrel, and this dummy round was made from a live cartridge with the powder charge removed, but the primer being left intact. So when the blank was fired, the energy from the ignited primer was enough to propel that dummy bullet out of the barrel with lethal force, and it hit Lee, who was about 12 to 15 feet away, in the abdomen. The impact was brutal and Lee was bleeding a lot. He was immediately rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center, where he was taken into surgery and spent 6 hours being treated. However, despite the efforts of the medical team, he didn't make it. He succumbed to the injuries and was sadly pronounced dead. He was 28 at the time. Now, at the time of Lee's death, it turned out that the majority of The Crow had been filmed. Only 3 key scenes were left to shoot. so a decision was made to complete the film in honor of his life. And to do that, stunt double Chad Stahelski, a friend of Lee's, was brought in to help finish the parts that Lee was supposed to play. Then, special effects company DreamQuest Images used technology from back then, digital face mapping, to sort of blend or merge Lee's face into Stahelski's body for those remaining scenes. I'll play a clip of them editing Brandon Lee's face into the stunt double's body, and it's just so interesting seeing how they were using technology in 1994, and nowadays just AI, you could do it with an app or a web browser. It's really, I don't know the word, really, you respect the effort, you know?
For The Crow, one effect sequence involved adding Brandon Lee to a shot of a broken mirror. Digital effects supervisor Tim Landry had to figure out a way to distort the image in the same way as the broken glass would have. First, an unused close-up of Lee was carefully traced or rotoscoped. The isolated image was then extracted from the original shot.
We had another element called a displacement map. I painted this based on the mirror image that they gave us. And what the computer does is it tells it how much to offset a given pixel. So now we've got an image that looks somewhat like it's being reflected in a shattered mirror.
Another difficult shot required the DreamQuest team to extract an image of Lee walking down an alley and have him walk through a doorway instead. As with the previous scene, the first step was to isolate and remove Lee from an unused shot. Since the scene was filmed in a dark, rainy alley with a handheld camera, the image had to be color-corrected and steadied. Lee's final image reflects the warmly lit interior environment.
The Crow was then released in 1994, and like I began by saying, it became a classic with cult-like fans. Lee's performance particularly earned him praise posthumously. Roger Ebert, a critic for example, noted that his performance was more of a screen achievement than any of the films of his father. Following the tragedy, Lee's mom, Linda Gladwell Lee, sued the filmmakers for an undisclosed amount. Also, given how big the impact had been, Lee's death led to some significant changes in safety protocols on film sets, particularly regarding the use of firearms. It led to more rigorous safety checks and the proper handling of prop guns. Also worth mentioning is that in the 2024 remake, directed by Rupert Sanders, in an effort to avoid another tragedy, banned the use of real guns on set, opting for CGI and other special effects to simulate gunfire. This decision was influenced by the accident we just talked about and also one involving a different film, Rust, in 2021, where cinematographer Helena Hutchins had a similar fate on set. And that's actually the one we're talking about next. Rust, 2024. Practice cross-draw with live bullets. If we're talking of a horrible movie set accident that really sent shockwaves around the entire industry, then Rust has to be at the top of that list. I mean, the incident was so bad they couldn't just pause filming for a few days like in the Deadpool accident. They had to abandon production for about 2 years. The film was being shot in 2021, but only got finalized and released in November of 2024. So what exactly happened here? Well, the incident happened on October 21st, 2021 at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Bonanza City, New Mexico, when cinematographer Helena Hutchins was fatally shot and director Joel Souza was injured during a rehearsal session. They were rehearsing a cross draw. As reported, Alec Baldwin, who was both an actor and a producer on the film, was holding a prop gun when it accidentally discharged, firing a live round that struck Hutchins in the chest, killing her instantly and wounding Souza in the shoulder. The incident was of course a shock and authorities were quick to get involved. The New Mexico Occupational Health and Safety Bureau had jurisdiction, and so they conducted an investigation into the incident. They found glaring safety violations that caused the accident. First, it turned out that Rust Movie Productions LLC, the company behind the filming and everything around that, didn't ensure that their own safety procedures based on industry safety bulletins were followed. Specifically, these bulletins included recommendations for firearm safety and the use of blank ammunition. And on that ammunition part, apparently despite industry and union guidelines prohibiting the use of live ammunition on any and all movie sets, 5 live rounds were found on that particular set, including in Baldwin's gun belt and on top of the cart where the crew kept props. Things were also made worse by the fact that, as alleged, Baldwin had been on the phone during firearms training, and that's in addition to the fact that there had been general concerns about the competency of those handling firearms on set. The last straw on that negligent streak was found to be assistant director Dave Halls handing the gun to Baldwin without consulting with on-set weapons specialists. And he apparently did that despite having witnessed 2 previous accidental discharges. Now, as you might imagine, a lot of people were furious about the whole thing, so lawsuits began streaming in. Baldwin and the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, were charged with involuntary manslaughter. Halls, the guy who handed Baldwin the firearm, pleaded no contest to the negligent use of a deadly weapon and received a suspended sentence and 6 months of probation. This wasn't an easy case by any means, and it went on for a good minute until a settlement was approved. This was specifically in the wrongful death suit filed by Matthew Hutchins and his son following Helena Hutchins' death. The terms of the settlement were sealed by the court. For the other filings, Gutierrez Reed was sentenced to 18 months in prison for involuntary manslaughter after being found guilty. Now, again, given the magnitude of what happened, the incident caused a push for significant changes in safety protocols on film sets, and this actually bore fruits because California and New York, for instance, introduced bills to ban live ammunition on sets, and Governor Gavin Newsom codified safety bulletins into law. Deadpool 2, 2018. Her first ever motorcycle stunt turned deadly. Deadpool 2, as most would admit, is basically a film with the perfect blend of humor and action, but then behind the scenes, things weren't quite as perfect, all owing to a terrible accident during its production. This is when Joy S.J. Harris, a 40-year-old stuntwoman from New York City, was killed while doing a motorcycle stunt on the set in Vancouver on August 14th of 2017. The accident is actually rather horrific, so I'm gonna gloss over the details. I can't get too into it because, we know how YouTube feels about that. So on that day, it was said that Harris was actually performing her first ever film stunt. Yes, her first ever one. She was doubling for actress Zazie Beetz, who portrayed Domino in the film. The stunt in question involved riding a high-powered bike, a Ducati Hyperstrada 939, down a ramp placed over a set of stairs outside the Vancouver Convention Center. However, during the live take, she lost control of the bike, hit a curb, and was thrown up through a plate glass window, that being of the Shaw Tower, striking her head on the window's frame in the process. The impact was so bad that she died on the scene. She had blunt force traumatic head injuries. For context, she had struck the frame at about 17 miles an hour. And something important here is that some of the crew members said they had spotted her struggling with the bike's brakes. They saw her, quote, grabbing or stabbing them. Now, what makes this case somewhat poignant, or adds to that somber feeling, is that Harris was one of a kind. Essentially, she was what you would describe as a trailblazer. She was, for instance, the first African-American woman to compete in an American Motorcyclist Association sanctioned event, having taken up motorcycling in 2009 and racing professionally since 2014. And she definitely displayed a deep passion for riding and motorsports. Following the incident, an investigation was set up. WorkSafe BC, the Canadian agency responsible for workplace safety, conducted an inquiry into the specifics of the accident and found multiple safety violations by TCF Vancouver Productions Ltd, the subsidiary of 20th Century Fox that was behind the film. And what violations, you ask? Well, first was the lack of risk assessment. The company was accused of failing to conduct a proper risk assessment around safety controls, the speed of the motorcycle, and equipment limitations. Second, Harris had no helmet. Whether for effect or just neglect, she performed the stunt without one. Third was inadequate supervision. Here it was that the company had not provided adequate stunt supervision for someone with no prior experience as a stunt double in the film industry. Lastly, there were no barriers. So there was nothing to prevent Harris and the bike from leaving the set perimeter, which is how she ended up crashing into a building. For these 4 violations, the incident led to a nearly $290,000 fine for TCF Vancouver Productions Ltd. Her family also reached an out-of-court settlement with 20th Century Fox for an unspecified sum, and on top of that, the film's production was suspended for 2 days, and both 20th Century Fox and Deadpool star Ryan Reynolds expressed their condolences to her family, and to sort of crown all that, the film was dedicated to her memory. On matters of safety, the incident was also significant as it prompted some changes in safety measures on set, with Fox revising and enhancing its safety standards, for example, requiring helmets for the rest of the filming and ditching Ducati motorcycles. Noah's Ark, 1928. They just didn't care about extras on set. Let me take you back to the early days of Hollywood to an incident where 3 people drowned, 1 lost a leg, and several were injured during a scene where the set was flooded with water. Now you have to keep in mind that this was in the 1920s, 1928 to be specific, a time when it is said that a lot of experimentation with sound and other things was going on in film production. Also, wowing audiences was the priority, and safety regulations, like those that we were talking about in the Russ incident, were virtually non-existent. It was this particular film that would actually pave the way to some level of safety measures in the film industry. Anyway, getting into it, the film was directed by Michael Curtis and produced by Daryl F. Zanuck, and as the name might give away, it was a biblical story, and an ambitious one for that matter. It was in fact apparently marketed as the spectacle for the ages, and designed to top any film ever made. That was a very big contrast to the huge mistakes being made in the production part. Now for starters, the thing was a massive production involving over 7,000 extras, and the climax featured a monumental flood scene, which required the use of over 600,000 gallons of water. The producers had decided to make the specific scene as realistic as possible. That was a strain in terms of how to handle all that, and apparently cinematographer Hal Moore expressed those concerns talking about the safety of the extras. His warnings were however ignored by Curtis and producer Daryl F. Zanuck. Curtis had responded that those extras would have to take their chances, and that wasn't a response good enough for Moore. He is said to have walked off the set after that, refusing to be part of the chaos that was about to ensue. For some reason, on the day of filming, in addition to poor safety measures, the water was also apparently released without warning, catching many of the extras off guard. It was brutal, to say the least. The sheer force of 600,000 gallons of water slammed people into the concrete sets, causing severe injuries. Reports indicate that 3 people drowned, 1 had to have a leg amputated, and dozens suffered broken limbs and other serious injuries. Among the extras was a young John Wayne, who managed to survive the whole ordeal. We're talking about John Wayne, the one popularly known for the film True Grit. The scene was so chaotic that it took 35 ambulances to treat all the wounded. What's even crazier in this one is that it went on to be released, and it wasn't after lots of criticism that some of the unsettling scenes were cut from the final public release. Initially, the producers had kept in some of the dark scenes, for instance, some that included some of the deceased extras in the process of drowning. The Exorcist, 1973. The film set was apparently cursed. Alright, so fun fact, I think The Exorcist is the scariest film of all time. Like, this movie used to give me nightmares as a kid. And I would say if I watch it again, it still does. The last time I watched it was like 2 years ago, just to remember how horrifying it is. It's so creepy. It is so creepy. But it's a great film with an 8.1 IMDb rating, and it grossed what would be $1.3 billion today in ticket sales. Now, this was probably one of the most notoriously troubled productions in cinema history. It has a series of accidents, injuries, and deaths that actually had many believing the film itself was cursed. What sort of incidents? Well, how about the fact that what was originally scheduled as an 85-day shoot ballooned into over 200 days of filming, with the budget nearly tripling from its initial estimate to $12 million. Second, how about when a bird flew straight into a circuit breaker on the set, causing a fire that destroyed all house sets except, rather disturbingly, Reagan's bedroom, the very room where the exorcism takes place? What are the chances something like that even happens? It took 6 weeks to rebuild the sets all over again. And that wasn't all, because there was apparently a set that was severely damaged by a sprinkler system malfunction. Now, these seem like major things, but this was just the beginning to what would be known as the Exorcist cursed. And wow, it was all downhill from there on out. Starting with some of the stars in the film suffering injuries that would affect them for the rest of their lives. First on that list was Ellen Burstyn, who during the scene where the possessed Reagan throws her mother across the room, got pulled too forcefully by a harness, causing her to land violently on her coccyx, the small triangular bone on the base of the spine. Apparently, the scream of pain you can hear in the film is genuine hurt from that. Burstyn fractured her spine at that moment and suffered chronic back problems for years afterward. It actually seems the damage had not been established immediately though, because director William Friedkin, known for his demanding style on set, used that take in the final film. Second on the list was Linda Blair, the 13-year-old actress who also fractured her lower spine during the violent bed shaking scene after the lacing supporting her rig came loose. Similar to Burstyn, the director thought she was just playing into the role. Blair recalled, "I'm crying, I'm screaming. They think I'm acting up a storm. It fractured my lower spine." Unfortunately, the injury eventually developed into scoliosis and caused her chronic pain for years. And again, like Burstyn's injury, the take where the injury happened was used in the final film. Beyond these injuries though, there were also deaths associated with the film. These are not on-set accidents per se, but really add to the curse claim. The first case is that of Jack McGoran, who played director Burke Dennings. He apparently died just 1 week after completing his scenes. Second is Vasiliki Maliaros, who played Father Kara's mother. He just happened to die before the film was completed. Then other deaths included the night watchman, the operator of the refrigeration system for Reagan's room, and an assistant cameraman's newborn. It honestly feels too surreal that all of that even happened. Even Ellen Burstyn later explained that there were too many deaths on the film. I think overall there were 9 deaths during the course of the film, which is an incredible amount. And again, like I started by saying, there was a lot going on, like small but odd things. For instance, a carpenter lost his thumb during production, a lighting technician lost one of his toes, and Linda Blair, the 13-year-old actress, received death threats from religious extremists who believed that she was, quote, glorifying Satan. That actually ended up requiring Warner Brothers to provide her with bodyguards for about 6 months. Overall, the incidents became so disturbing that director William Friedkin asked Father Thomas Birmingham, a priest serving as a technical advisor on the film, to perform an exorcism on the set, and while he declined to perform an actual exorcism, he did conduct a solemn blessing ceremony attended by everyone on set, hoping to kind of squash their fears. Top Gun, 1986. Aerial stunts gone wrong. Top Gun is packed with action and solid drama, and the underlying theme basically being death-defying flight stunts. I mean, it's remembered as a film that catapulted Tom Cruise to stardom, and like I just said about its theme, became synonymous with aerial stunts and adrenaline-fueled action. Now, the reason I've called it a franchise is because fast forward to 2022, Top Gun Maverick came out and brought back all the magic. Despite all that though, both films interestingly have a rather sad side, marked by horrible filming incidents involving the pilots. Let's start with Art Scholl, a pilot in Top Gun 1986, who was a legend in the world of aerial stunts. He had been hired for that role following his legacy as a renowned stunt pilot and aerial cameraman. I mean, the man was a pioneer in aerial cinematography itself and had worked on many other films, including Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Great Waldo Pepper. Unfortunately, his streak was cut short on September 16th of 1985 when, while filming a scene for the movie, Scholl's Pitts S2 camera plane failed to recover from an inverted flat spin at about 3,000 feet and plunged into the Pacific Ocean. His final words over the radio were rather haunting. "I have a problem," then followed by, "I've really got a problem," sometime later. Following the disaster, an extensive search was done, but neither Scholl's remains nor the plane's wreckage were ever found. Only a few debris from the plane were seen floating around by the Coast Guard responsible for the search. Also, as news of the incident spread, it came as a shock to the aviation community that he had been a part of, as he was really known for his meticulous planning and of course exceptional flying skills. His wife Judy described him as a type A personality who took his job seriously and was very meticulous in planning. The film was ultimately dedicated to his memory, which is arguably a testament to the kind of contribution he made, not just to the film, but the entire world of aerial stunts in film. Now, maybe just out of sheer bad luck or whatever it could have been, there happens to be another plane crash incident involving this franchise. This is one where Charles Chuck Coleman, the flight instructor who apparently trained the cast of Top Gun Maverick, tragically lost his life. He had flown with them for more than 100 hours in the US Navy F-18 Hornets just to prepare them for the film. The incident in question is a plane crash during the Las Cruces Air and Space Expo in New Mexico on October 20th of 2024. On that day, Coleman had been performing aerobatics on his monoplane, the extra, I don't know how to pronounce that, EA-300, when it crashed at about 2:30 p.m. The show got called off immediately following the crash. Now, of course, accidents are not planned and can happen to anyone, but this case caught some by surprise given he had over 10,000 hours of flight experience and had performed at hundreds of air shows before. In fact, like Scholl, who we just talked about, Coleman was just as highly respected in the aviation community. And beyond all that, he was generally a good person. That's at least going by a tribute by his colleague, actor Miles Teller, who, having worked with him on the film, praised his kindness and expertise. Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, 2016. She wasn't notified of a critical stunt change. This one is rather odd in the sense that there were actually 2 accidents, equally bad, during its production. Now, Resident Evil needs no introduction, but for the few that might not have a clue, it's a franchise that began with video games and got an offshoot in the direction of film. The first Resident Evil game, a certified hit, was released in 1996, while the first film, titled just Resident Evil, was released in 2002. The film we're talking about, Resident Evil The Final Chapter from 2016, was the 6th release in the franchise. Now, a lot could be said, and has been said, about the film franchise, including lots of criticisms around the order of events, or even specifically to the 2016 release, the logic behind fight scenes. So I could see these accidents just adding to that anger. So let's start with the Olivia Jackson incident. Olivia Jackson was a UK-based stunt performer and had been hired as a body double for actress Mila Jovovich, who plays Alice. Unfortunately, on September 15, 2015, during what was clearly a complex motorcycle stunt in Cape Town, South Africa, Jackson suffered what would become life-changing injuries. She had been supposed to ride a motorcycle at high speed, about 43 miles per hour, towards a camera mounted on a mechanical arm on a Mercedes SUV. The camera was meant to quickly elevate above her head at the last moment, but a last-minute change in timing, of which Jackson had not been aware of, led to a catastrophic collision. The camera ended up smashing into her upper body and face, causing severe injuries. The damage was so bad she was left in a coma for 17 days. Her left arm had to be amputated above the elbow, and she also suffered a lot of bodily damage: a twisted spine, slight paralysis in the upper left portion of her body, a severed thumb, some facial scars, several broken bones, punctured lungs, and a dislocated shoulder. Now, rather understandably following the accident, Jackson went on to file a lawsuit against the production company, Davis Films / Impact Pictures, and other parties that had been involved in the stunt. In her words, she refused the idea that film sets can run haphazardly organized sets, and when injuries happen, expect people like her to be cut off and go away quietly. And good for her, the South African High Court ruled in her favor, finding that the stunt was negligently planned and executed by Bikers Action SA, the company operating the camera and vehicle. Also, the court dismissed allegations that Jackson was at fault, stating that she wasn't informed of the timing change, which was clearly critical to the overall stunt safety. Despite the victory in court though, Jackson had a lot to deal with. I mean, her life was changed in irreversible ways. She, for example, continues to undergo treatment and rehabilitation for those injuries I mentioned, and her career as a stunt performer was effectively ended. Away from Jackson, like I mentioned, there was still another incident following the shooting of this film. Same set, actually. This is the case of 34-year-old crew member Ricardo Cornelius, who died after being crushed by a prop car on the same set. Cornelius was part of a team manually rotating a US Army Hummer when it slipped and pinned him beneath. He was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead hours later. Rather weirdly though, it was revealed later by Cornelius's widow, Shafifa, that the crew tried to minimize the extent of injury at the time of the incident. A colleague of her husband had called and simply asked her for his identification documents, given the reason as to him having been injured on set, but that she shouldn't be worried about it. Hey guys, just want to pop in here before the video ends, and I do want to let you guys know if you find this whole horrible accidents on movie sets topic interesting, then you'd be happy to know that I made a full video dedicated to an accident that happened on the filming of the Twilight Zone movie. I'm not going to spoil anything about it, but if you do find that topic interesting, it's a video that exists and was uploaded a couple weeks ago. Alright guys, that was it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. If you are new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. I upload a bunch of morbid videos, and before this video ends, I do want to remind you guys that if you use code TUV50, you get $50 off at Flexispot. So yeah, click the link below and get yours now, and experience the ultimate in stability and performance. Make sure to go watch last week's video, Songs with Disturbing Backstories Part 3. It's literally one of my favorite videos I've ever made. So if you want to go watch that, make sure to go do that. And wish me happy birthday in the comments. I'll see you guys next time I upload.